Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 26th chapter of Inheritance, written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Everyone needs a hug after the attack. Izuku needs some rest, and I think we all need to piece back together our hearts. Let's find out if any hugs are given out after the trigger warnings. This fan fiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game and indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. After the USJ, some realizations. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 26. The door to the nurse's office opened as Izuku and Sir were approaching, and a detective that Izuku remembered from before stepped out into the hall. "I was just coming to look for you," Tsukauchi said with a calm, friendly expression. "Recovery Girl was afraid young Midoriya here had been more injured than we realized and was passed out somewhere." "I'm fine," Izuku said, eager to assuage their worry. "I mean, I think my arm is broken and my leg's a bit weird, but I'm not, hurt." Both men looked at him as if he'd grown an extra head. "He believes he's telling the truth?" Tsukauchi told Sir, sounding baffled. "What would you consider hurt?" Sir asked Izuku with a raised eyebrow. "I don't know," Izuku said, feeling flustered. "I know I'm hurt, but compared to All Might or Sensei or 13 or..." "We are going to need to have a conversation about self-care and recognizing when to ask for help," Sir said, sounding a little tired. "For now, go have Recovery Girl examine you." "I'll need to take your statement soon," Tsukauchi told Izuku apologetically, "but it can wait until you're ready." Izuku was tired, exhausted, really, but didn't feel like he had room to complain about it when everyone else had also been through the ringer today. Recovery Girl recognized the signs and immediately put him in a bed beside the one All Might was currently ensconced in. The hero's long frame didn't quite fit even in the largest bed in the infirmary, and his feet hung over the end, making Izuku feel tiny in comparison. "I'm reluctant to use my quirk on you until you've rested more. So I'm going to splint your arm and give you some fluids before I try to heal you. Then you'll probably sleep for quite a few hours." "Are you sure it's okay for me to be near All Might?" Izuku asked, still worried. "Izuku, think," Sir told him calmly. "I know that it doesn't seem like it, but All Might is essentially quirkless now. Your quirk stopped affecting him once you received One for All." Izuku had forgotten. It was so easy when All Might still seemed so heroic. "Do you really think I let you two be in the same room if there was any danger?" Recovery Girl asked, sounding brisk and slightly offended. "Relax and let me do my job." She went to work while Sir stepped into the hallway, and when he returned, Izuku was surprised to see his dad walk in behind him. "Dad?" Izuku said in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Sir sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose again. He looked like a man whose patience was at its limit. "Zu, you just fought villains who attacked your school, and you're injured. Where else would I be?" Izuku guessed he had a point. He only really realized how upset his father was when he noticed tendrils of smoke escaping his nostrils. "Sorry," Izuku said, blushing slightly. "I didn't mean for you to worry. I'm okay. Recovery Girl says she can fix me once I get a little rest." "They told me Shigaraki Tomura and Kurogiri were there, along with dozens of others, his father said, sounding both angry and frustrated. They said they got a copy of the teachers' schedules, Izuku told him, trying to sound placating. He knew he should probably be more upset, but the worry for everyone else had put his worry for himself on hold. They were after All Might. I don't think they knew I was even going to be there. His dad turned to look back at Sir for confirmation. That does seem to be the case, though the investigation will take time to be as thorough as possible, Sir said with a nod. They brought some sort of manufactured monster with them that they believed had the strength to defeat All Might. After the fight, they found the beast over a kilometer away, showing no signs of life after its exposed brain was severely damaged. Izuku and his dad both shuddered at the same time for different reasons. That, Izuku said meekly. That was me. I punched it on top of the head while All Might was fighting it. Sir didn't look particularly surprised by this, but he did look guarded. His dad looked stunned. It hit Izuku then. The full implication of everything that happened that day sank in, and his fear caught up with him. He had faced off against real villains, and in doing so had made a conscious decision to do what he felt was necessary to end things, no matter how brutal. I knew All Might was running out of time and they seemed so sure that Nomu could kill him, and All Might was starting to do that thing with the steam before he changes. I just knew I had to do something to end it quickly because I couldn't go near Sensei and 13. Izuku said in a rush, hardly drawing breath as he explained. Am I the one that killed it? More smoke wafted up from his dad's nose and mouth, and Recovery Girl quickly opened a window and turned on a fan. I don't know, Zu, his father said, reaching out to rest a hand on Izuku's head. But if you did, it's okay. Izuku's eyes slid past his father, whose eyes were brimming with tears, much like Izuku's. Is it? Izuku asked in a shaky whisper. It is, Sir said from behind his dad's shoulder. Midoriya-kun, Detective Sukauchi said gently from beside Sir. I've been getting reports and taking statements from the scene. That thing was attacking with intent to kill, and so were the other villains there. Anything you did in there was self-defense, and nothing more. But heroes don't kill. Izuku wasn't sure why he suddenly felt so gutted by this, when he was fine up until this point. He had known at the time that punching anyone or anything in the brain at full force was likely to kill, and he'd done it with almost no hesitation, to save All Might, to save his friends and get his teacher's help. But death? He sat upright in bed so quickly he almost knocked heads with his father and shouted, Holy shit! Everyone startled, and Recovery Girl put a hand over her heart as if having a heart attack. If that Nomu died, did I? The idea that he might have inherited anything from that monstrosity was enough to make him feel ill. His father literally belched out smoke as he realized what Izuku meant. I doubt it, Sir said after only the briefest of pauses. Reports say it had regeneration and you're still injured. Oh, thank goodness, Izuku said, not realizing he'd turned transparent until he let the breath he was holding out. Why do you think that is? His father asked, inhaling some of the smoke that had billowed out when Izuku had shouted. It could be for any number of reasons, Sir said. The most logical would be that the Nomu was too far away when his life completely ebbed away. It had enhanced regeneration and or healing, so it probably didn't die immediately. They found it over a kilometer away, and while Izuku's quirk range isn't very clearly known, it's definitely not that far. Okay, Izuku said with a sigh, allowing his father to press him gently backward until his head was resting on the pillow again. Okay, that makes sense. He was still torn about having killed someone? Something? But at least he hadn't gained anything from it. As amazing as regeneration and shock absorption and whatever else could be, he would have felt tainted somehow. He's going to need to see a counselor about this, Recovery Girl announced. Everyone, including Izuku, nodded. He would definitely need some time to work through all of the aspects of the day and what they meant. It had been a while since he'd been to counselling, but it was probably time to go again. Besides, Sir had told him once that almost all heroes saw counsellors at one point or another in their careers, and some of them did it routinely. It made sense if their whole lives were anything like today had been. Recovery Girl started an IV with fluids and added a little something to help Izuku sleep. "Sleep now," his father said, ruffling his hair. "I'll be here when you wake up." Izuku closed his eyes and let the drowsiness carry him away. As promised, Izuku woke to find his father sitting at his bedside, reading a book that looked like it was for pleasure reading instead of work, for a change. When he noticed Izuku's shift, he dog-eared the page and closed it without hesitation. "How long was I out?" "Only a couple of hours," his dad said quietly. Izuku looked at the next bed and saw that All Might was still fast asleep, but had turned on his side and pulled his knees up to better fit in the cramped space. "Is he really going to be okay?" Izuku asked as Recovery Girl came over to check on him. "As fine as he ever is," she said, not bothering to keep her voice down. "Sasaki-san will be here to pick him up in a little while, and he'll be back to his own self in a day or so." "What about me?" Izuku asked. "You'll be fine in just a few minutes," she said briskly, kissing him on the forehead. Izuku felt a mild tingle in his arm, and his leg made an audible cracking noise as it repaired itself, but it didn't hurt. The nurse nodded in satisfaction and began removing the splint on his arm. She only had to loosen the tape a little and it slid right off like a glove, thanks to his slippery skin. The needle and plastic tube was removed from his arm, and she held pressure on the tiny wound while she gave his hand another small smooch to close it. "You've just woken up, but you'll still be pretty tired," she said. "It's just as well school's been cancelled until Monday. You can take that time to rest up." "They cancelled school? Why?" Izuku asked. Both adults just stared at him. "They have to conduct a thorough investigation and will need access to the entire campus," Sir said as he entered, "not just the USJ." Izuku nodded and began to mumble to himself about security systems, computer hacking, backup emergency generators, and other things until his father cleared his throat. "Sorry," Izuku said sheepishly. "It's a lot to consider." "It is," Sir agreed, "and since you have a couple days off of school, I'd like you to devote some of your time to reading this." "When to put yourself first," Izuku read from the front cover, "recognizing your own needs in stressful situations." He looked at Sir Night-Eye with a scowl, not sure if he was being teased. "Izuku, this is the second time since school started less than 2 weeks ago that you've delayed your own medical treatment to put others first." "I know that, but the first time Karchan was a wreck. He needed the help way more. What if that head injury had been super serious and I made it worse by being there? And then today, it was All Might. All Might! There's no way I'm more important than him." Sir sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose under his glasses like he had tended to do when he was frustrated. His father was shaking his head ruefully. "Has it occurred to you that in a school full of heroes there might be someone else able to render you first aid or at least triage care while you waited for Recovery Girl?" Sir pointed out. "Or that Recovery Girl has been a pro for more years than you've been alive and might know a thing or two about treating multiple patients at once?" "Well, it makes sense when you say it like that, but..." Izuku spluttered, feeling a little flustered. "At the time, it made perfect sense." Sir quirked a small smile and shook his head. "Read the book." "Yes, sir," Izuku said with a sigh. Izuku's dad took that book and the one he'd been reading and slipped them into his jacket pockets. "Good. We'll discuss this more another day. For now, I've got to get Toshinori back home." Much to Izuku's surprise, all it took to wake All Might was for Sir to call out, "Toshi, emergency, suit up." All Might was on his feet in an instant, looking awake and alert, though not in his muscular form. "What? Huh? What's the situation?" All Might demanded before realizing where he was. "Time to go home," Sir said briskly, holding up a very large bathrobe and a pair of slippers. "No need to get changed, the car is waiting at the door." The school at night wasn't as creepy as Izuku thought it might be. The hallways were all still well lit, and there were police and security bots patrolling the corridors as they walked out. Sir stood ready to support All Might, but the hero walked out on his own, head held high. "I'm sorry I failed you today, young Midoriya," he finally said as they reached the door of the school that led to the parking lot. "What are you talking about?" Izuku asked. "You were amazing." "Not so. It was irresponsible for me to use up all of my energy so early in the day. When I knew there was an important training session planned, if I had been more willing to let other heroes take over, you never would have had to face that thing alone." "You can't be everywhere, All Might," Izuku said earnestly. "You're the one who always says that we don't get to pick and choose when we'll be needed." All Might sighed and rested a hand gently on Izuku's head. "A hero also shows up when he promises to be somewhere. I learned more than one valuable lesson today, thanks to you. Now go home and rest. I'll do the same." Izuku wasn't totally sure what All Might meant, but he nodded and thanked both heroes as he let his father lead him to the car. Izuku woke up later than he had in years the following day. He supposed that his body had needed the extra rest after being asked to speed up the healing on his broken arm and whatever had been wrong with his leg. He wandered out to the living room and found his father sitting on the couch, reading the book that Sir had given Izuku the previous day. "Good morning," he said as he came into the room. "Good morning," his dad said, looking up from the book. "How do you feel?" "Good. I guess I was tired. I'm still feeling... I don't know. Tired isn't the right word, but... A lot happened yesterday. It's a lot to take in," his dad said quietly. "I've already heard from Sir Night Eye, and All Might is doing just fine. 13 and your teacher are also on their way to recovery, though it'll take longer." "That's good news," Izuku said, feeling relief. But there was still a weight on his chest that he couldn't quite describe. "Sir gave me a recommendation for a couple of therapists that work with heroes and people who struggle with the implications of traumatic events," his father said. "I think it's a good idea for you to speak to someone sooner rather than later. I'm sure the school counselor is very good, but I want you to have the best." Izuku nodded, automatically trusting his words because the recommendation had come from Sir. If it was someone he thought was reliable, then it was good enough for Izuku. "I've left a message and hopefully we can get you in for an appointment soon." Izuku heard a soft buzzing sound coming from the dining area and saw a phone vibrating enough to rattle against the wood. "That's your phone," his father said, following his gaze. "It's been doing that all morning. I heard it in your bag and took it out to charge it. I didn't want to wake you, but it seems like someone is eager to talk to you." Izuku padded over and examined the screen. He had missed 11 calls from Ida and 4 messages from him as well. There were also 4 from Uraraka, 2 from Kirishima, 1 from Kaminari, and 1 from Yaoyorozu. Yikes! I kind of forgot that I'm the class rep. I should have texted everyone yesterday. "Zoo, they're probably calling to check on how you're doing, not because you're class rep," his father said, sounding slightly exasperated. "Sir was right. You need to learn to recognize where your priorities are and start seeing yourself as others see you." Izuku made a groaning noise. Now he was going to be lectured by Sir and his father? Great. Well, I'd better at least call Ida before he blows a gasket, Izuku said with an embarrassed shrug. Even as he finished saying it, the phone began buzzing in his hand. He quickly answered with, "Hey Ida, sorry, I just woke up." The next hour was spent on the phone with Ida, giving his version of events and hearing about what had happened after Izuku left the USJ via the hole in the dome. Ida had reached the school and burst into the principal's office to let them know there had been an attack at the USJ, which had prompted All Might to go on ahead while Nezu rounded up all of the teachers. Ida had travelled with the teachers back to the facility, where Snipe had shot Shigaraki several times, but Kurogiri had managed to spirit him away before he could be taken into custody. The two villains had abandoned the rest of their comrades, who had been rounded up quickly and arrested. Once the battle was over, All Might had been isolated by Cementos so they could prepare him for transport to get checked out at the hospital. Of course, Izuku knew what had actually happened, but was glad to know what story had been fed to his classmates. The two other injured teachers were taken away in ambulances, and Izuku's classmates had been treated for minor injuries by the medics on site. Everyone's parents had been called before students were released, and the police were still investigating. It all seemed so cut and dried now that it was over, but Izuku knew better. He praised Ida for his part in getting help and felt better knowing that he had been in touch with their other classmates to check on them and keep them informed. Ida was a far better class rep than Izuku. Tsukauchi made an appearance to take a statement not much later, and then Izuku was finally free to just sit and think. That wasn't necessarily a good thing. That night, his sleep was plagued with nightmares. Monstrous creatures were swarming the school. Nomu. They were grabbing students and stuffing them into a huge swimming pool-sized vat of green, murky liquid. There was chaos as the teachers tried to fight, but there were too many of the behemoths, and Shigaraki Tomura was standing on the sidelines grabbing kids too. Only the kids that Shigaraki grabbed turned to ash instead of being thrown into the vat, but Dream Izuku knew that they were the lucky ones. Dream Izuku was strapped to an exam table, unable to use any of his quirks. He had tubes in each of his arms and legs that were attached to the top of the vat full of students, and dripping blood onto them. Each one his blood touch transformed into a Nomu identical to the others. Their skulls melted away to expose their brains as their faces stretched into sharp-toothed beaks. They rose as mindless monsters from the tank to join in the attack on the other students. All Izuku could do was scream and thrash in an attempt to get free while the disembodied voice promised him, "You won't even remember this in a few minutes." Izuku screamed as one of the Nomu creatures appeared in front of him and grabbed his arm. "I'm sorry!" Izuku's own voice is what woke him as it bounced off of the walls of his room. That and his father gripping his shoulders and shaking him, begging him to wake up. Izuku could just barely hear his own ragged breathing over the sound of his thunderous heartbeat roaring in his ears. His father had a vague cloud of smoke over his head, probably from exhaling it while trying to wake his son. Izuku's eyes were wide as he tried to comprehend that he was now awake. He faded in and out of transparency as his breath hitched once, twice, 3 times. Then a sob escaped and he gripped his father in a tight, soothing hug as the tears began to flow. His father's warm hands rubbed his back as he, Izuku, purged the poison of his dreams from the reality of the moment. Soft words of comfort that Izuku couldn't really hear but still understood were murmured into his hair, and when he had finally exhausted the tears and the trembling had stopped, he sat back feeling embarrassed. "Sorry," Izuku apologized awkwardly. "That was a crazy dream." "There's no need to be sorry," his father assured him, reaching for the box of tissues on the desk and offering it to his son. "It sounds like everything you've been bottling up is starting to leak out while you dream." "I guess," Izuku said, feeling thirsty. He blew his nose and took a couple more deep breaths to steady himself. "Do you want to talk about it?" his dad asked. "That's okay. I didn't mean to wake you up and—" "Stop that," his father said firmly, yet not angrily. "You did not wake me up, and even if you had, making sure you're okay is way more important." "What time is it?" Izuku asked, looking around for his phone. "It's only 11:30, his father said. "You've barely been asleep an hour." Izuku was startled to hear this. It seemed like he'd been trapped in that horrorscape for hours. "Tell me about your dream," his father said. "Maybe saying it out loud will help make it seem less daunting in your mind." Izuku doubted that, but gave it a try. He described everything that had happened in his dream, trying to detach his feelings from those of his dream self. His father listened with an inscrutable expression, but the wisps of smoke curling from his nostrils gave away the turmoil he was feeling. "Zu," his father said after a moment of silence. I'm sorry that your subconscious is doing this to you, and that there are experiences you've had that have fueled that kind of nightmare. One thing seems obvious, though. You're blaming yourself for something that is not your fault." Izuku nodded. He knew in his mind that it was true, but he also felt a sense of guilt that he couldn't seem to suppress, knowing that something that was taken from him was used to hurt others. "You'll be glad to know that I heard back from the therapist that Sir Night-Eye recommended," his father said at last. "You have an appointment tomorrow afternoon. I'm pretty sure he and All Might pulled some strings to get you in that quickly, but I'm not complaining. Is that okay with you?" Izuku nodded again, still in a slight daze from reliving the dream out loud. "Yeah, I think it might be a good idea." He didn't want to burden his father with such ugly imagery after all, and a professional might actually have some advice or fresh perspective to help keep the nightmares at bay. His father finally left him alone when Izuku assured him he was alright. But he didn't sleep again that night. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. Nightmares suck. Izuku blaming himself for everything is so sad. It's almost like survivor's guilt in a way. Maybe the therapist will help him out. I just hope that the villains haven't had their own plans to sabotage it. At the end of this week on Saturday, I'll be doing the memory walk, which I'm really excited about, but I'm also a little bit nervous, but that's to be expected. All credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction, A is for Amy71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel and you hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah.